for the process of Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, which we'll all be seeing soon,
So soon.
is the recording process for the animated characters completely separate from the live actors, or do you have to meet up with them to like sync some things up?
I wish we got to meet up with them to do some stuff. Especially the second movie was filmed a lot in Vancouver and Hawaii. And those were, I've never been to Vancouver, but anyway. So they did all the live action stuff first for all three. That was their way to do all three movies. They did all the live action stuff first, and then they did the voices separate. So for the second movie, it was still very COVID time, and my husband was building me a proper booth, but I didn't have it yet, and so I had been using my closet. We were, I worked for 2 years in my closet. It's kind of crazy. So the first 2 sessions that I worked on the movie, Ben, I just kind of coincidentally, he was in Vancouver, but it wasn't because of the Sonic movie. But he was in Vancouver, I was in my closet in Burbank, and the director was in Hawaii, I think, and everybody else was kind of sprinkled around LA. So we did the whole thing over Zoom, and I recorded on my end those first 2, and I thought, well, surely we're gonna redo this, because they weren't recording on their end. I was only recording on my end. Usually they have us, like, our computers talking. And they didn't do that. I don't remember why, but whatever. So I did get to work with Ben, because we had, screens, we had figured it out, thank goodness. So I did get to work with him twice, and then I did go into Paramount a couple of times and Sony Studios a couple of times, but never in person with anybody except for a very masked engineer who came in, tapped my microphone, and then ran away. It was really strange, and then I didn't meet anybody in person until any of the red carpet stuff. So then the third movie, I did the whole movie by myself. I got to go to Paramount a couple of times, and but I've done so many like pickup things, like either on my own or over Zoom too. But I have a proper booth now, so not in my closet, but in my booth at home. A lot of it I've done there. Kind of crazy, but I didn't get to work with anybody on this one, which is a bummer, but still awesome.
I have one more question for you that kind of switches in a different direction.
Yeah.
So Digimon. That was one of in the first wave of like localized animes that like got really popular in the States. Like that was right when anime was like hitting its stride here. What was it like to be part of like one of those first localization projects?
So that was my very first anime that I'd ever worked on, and it was my second show. So my very first show was The Kids from Room 402, which was original animation, and we worked together as a group, and then we would record first, and they animated to what we did. So Digimon is anime, so you're dubbing English over Japanese, and it's a very different process. I had no idea what I was doing. You hear beeps in your headphones. It's already done. It's finished. So they show us the scene and they play it for us in Japanese, and I can hear it in my headphones. And then I've got my script and I've got the screen, and I'm looking and I'm hearing beeps. And on the 4th imaginary beep is when the mouth opens, and that's when you're supposed to start talking. It was so stressful those first few times because I had no idea what I was doing. And when you go in and you've already booked the job, you kind of have to pretend like you know what you're doing. So, and I didn't. So it was stressful, but also it's a very different aesthetic. Like it's like they have a very different, there's sounds or efforts or whatever's for almost everything that your character does, which we don't always do. Like I don't make a sound every time I move my head or move my hand or what, we don't as typical Americans we don't do that, but in Japanese and anime, they do. So I had to get used to that, and it was a little uncomfortable for me because I was like, did that sound weird? Was that like normal? Like I didn't understand it then, and I was like, wow, you can say a lot of different ways. There's like so many different ways to say
Their laughs are super specific.
Laughs too, yes, and all of it is it's just very stylized, and so I had to get used to that too. So there was a huge learning curve for me on that show. But in the end, also we didn't have Pro Tools and all the digital stuff. Like they were doing reel to reel. So if I screwed up, I had to redo the whole thing. It was a lot of I was exhausted after those sessions because my brain was trying to work really, really hard. and get ahead of what I didn't know how to do. But it was such a great show, and it's such a beautiful thing that like we got to come back to it about like when we did Try. It was so great to come back to those characters because then I had all these other anime shows under my belt, and I was like, oh, now I know what I'm doing. She had grown up, and so had I, and so it was just kind of this great little reunion with her. I love Sora so much. She's such a...
She's one of my favorites. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, I'll give you a little, just an additional tag on to that, only because it's related. So I did Gabumon for Digimon Adventures 2020. Now, I didn't know, like when they brought me in, they never played me the original. They just said, let's find a voice for this character. I'm like,
Well,
okay,
you
great.
didn't have a reference.
No reference. So, and I figured, oh, it was like 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, so whoever did it probably is in the industry or whatever. So we were doing the Twitter takeover, and I put a picture of Kirk and me up. And said, and somebody said, Gabumon. And I went, I haven't announced that yet. I looked at Kirk and I'm like, were you the original Gabumon in Digimon? He said, yeah, why? I'm like, I'm Gabumon now. And we were like, what? So we were laughing because, and I had no idea. And one day I asked him, oh, we were doing a console run, I said, by the way, what was your Gabumon voice? And he did it for me. And I'm like, oh my God, I could not be more different than that. So I was like, oh, okay, I can see why maybe be like, this might take a little getting used to because I never heard it before. And if I'd known it was Kirk, I would have been like, why didn't you just have Kirk come back?
They replaced everybody.
But you know what, Jamie told me that though.
Yeah.
One day he
Jamie
asked me, he
called me.
said, he's like, I don't know why we replaced her.
Jamie called me and he said, look, I just want you to know there's another Digimon series coming out and it was come down from Japan and they want to replace everybody and I just want to let you know that we tried, we fought for you guys, we really thought it was a better idea to have as many of the originals back as possible, but they said nobody.
Yeah. Had I known it was originally Kirk, I would have said, why isn't Kirk here?
Yeah, but they.
What
It
am I
was
doing? You know what I
Japan.
mean?
Japan
Yeah.
said nope.
But so now whenever we do cons together, we both have Gabumon pictures, we're the Gabumen. We're the
I love that
Gabumen.
so much.
Yeah, we're the Gabumen, so, yeah. So that was just related to your Digimon question, and it was related to Sonic as well, so I just.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Whole tie-in.
Yeah, exactly.